we are going to use this and go ahead and I'm sorry, we're going to record this as well as we're talking, and that way we can share it with everybody that couldn't join us tonight. We had quite a few people want to join that couldn't. Time zones are, get everybody. So again, thank you, and on behalf of everyone in here, we thank you for your service as well. So
thank you guys for all your support and all you do. It's amazing, and we sure appreciate it. Everybody that's put on that uniform sure appreciates it.
Absolutely. And we've actually got some of our volunteers joining us here tonight as well that volunteer in the Denver USO Center, as well as the recording is going to be used for a group of airmen, and my background is falling down. It's going to be used for a group of airmen in a leadership class that is actually going to watch it tomorrow. So we're super excited to get to join tomorrow as well.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. That's great. No, thanks for doing that. Thanks for everybody who took the time to join tonight.
Perfect. Well, we'll just kind of have a few questions, and then we wanted to open it up to our guests to see what questions they had. And, basically we're just kind of wondering, what made you join the military in the beginning, and what kind of career did you have, and how did you transition out, that type of thing. So
yeah, absolutely. So from a very early age, it was a calling, which I think is very, very common. And my grandfather served in World War II, and he actually didn't make it home. So I grew up with pictures of him with his plane. He flew the Corsair, which is that, for those that remember, it was the plane with the gull wings that folded up like that. There was a show, Black Sheep Squadron, back in the late 70s, early 80s, where Robert Conrad played Pappy Boynton in that show. So I'd always watch that with my dad, because he loved watching it, because he had no connection to his father other than the same medals that I saw, the same black and white photos that I saw, the same silk maps that they gave aviators back then. So if you hit the water, a paper map would just disintegrate, but a silk map wouldn't. So my dad was born while his father was away in World War II. So they never even met. So we got to watch that show together, and I just knew that I was going to go down that path. It was a call. It was never even a question. And then very early on in life, I found out about special operations, and I found out specifically what SEALs were. And I remember I was 7 years old, and back then I was the remote control in our house back then. For those of you that remember, there were four channels. There was ABC, CBS, NBC, and that one outlier channel that was just that weird outlier. And usually on Sundays during football, they would have a war movie playing. And I didn't really care about football, but my dad did. And so he'd be watching, commercial would come up, he'd look at his watch and say, go. And I'd run up and I'd turn the channel to that outlier channel playing the war movie, and I'd get to watch it for 2 minutes. And then he'd look at his watch, he'd be like, all right, change it back. And I'd change it back to football. But on one of those, they showed a black and white film and had these guys climbing up over the beach and putting explosives on these obstacles in advance of a conventional force landing. And it was a movie called The Frogmen. And I asked my dad, hey, who are these guys? And he said, they're frogmen. And I said, okay, well, what is that? This looks really cool. And he said, go ask your mother. Football was on. So I went and asked my mom, and she was a librarian. She still is. And she took every opportunity that she had to take us to the local library and teach us how to do research. And so we went down there and did research on frogmen and underwater demolition team, naval combat demolition units. And I found out that what SEALs were, and I read that SEALs were some of the most elite fighting forces in the world, and that the training was some of the toughest ever devised by modern military. So they had me from a very early age. The recruiter's job was very simple. So I just put my sights on that goal, and that was what I wanted to do. So I never really changed. I never deviated course, and really everything that I did was about research into the SEAL teams, special operations in general, research on warfare, terrorism, insurgencies, counterinsurgencies. I was doing CrossFit-esque type stuff because I saw some videos that showed SEALs climbing ropes and running in the sand and doing obstacle courses and that sort of thing. So I tried to make my own in the backyard with a rope and a little pull-up bar and all that sort of thing. So I was just focused on that. And then enlisted in '96, and so pre 9/11 days, got to Bud's SEAL training in January of '97, but went through training, got to my first SEAL team, and we all thought, as soon as we showed up at our first SEAL teams in October of '97 for my class, we thought we were going to get issued the special pagers, and we were going to get the golden Connex box would open, it'd be all this amazing gear, and we'd go off and do these amazing operations like we saw in the movies, and then we'd come back in time for beers. And it wasn't quite like that. It was exact opposite of that. We crossed the quarterdeck at our first SEAL teams, and they handed us brooms and mops, and we did new guy stuff, and cleaned bathrooms and painted walls and changed light bulbs and all that sort of thing. And really, I did one pre-September 11th deployment as a SEAL, and then got back from that, did another workup, and became a sniper school. And I deployed again, and about 2 weeks into that one was September 11th. And that, of course, changed everything for everyone. And that's when we really started to do what we thought we were going to be doing when we came into the SEAL team. So when I got back from that, I'd already applied for to OCS before that deployment. So came back and went to OCS, where I did exactly what I did in boot camp a few years earlier, except now I'm getting yelled at by Marine drill instructors instead of Navy ones. And folded underwear and made my bed and did all that sort of thing that that you do, and then went back to the SEAL teams as an officer, and then deployed right away to Afghanistan. And then it was just go up until the end of my time in uniform, which was the summer of 2016. And wow. Yeah, and I always knew, because growing up when I was doing that research with my mom, there's hardly anything written about SEALs. So this is the 80s. And there's a couple books here and there, a couple magazine articles, which I still have. As you can see behind me, I'm not sure you can, there's a lot of books behind me. So I rarely throw a book. I mean, never throw a book out. If it gets thrown out, it's my wife that does it without me knowing somehow. She spilled something on her, something like that. But I love books. I just always loved books and reading. But a lot of what I learned about special operations in the military came from the pages of fictional thrillers by guys like Tom Clancy and Nelson DeMille, A.J. Quinnell, J.C. Pollock, Mark Olden, all these guys, David Morrell, who created the character Rambo back in 1972 with First Blood. And then in the 80s, he had a great series that started with Brotherhood of the Rose, where he really took the best traditions of UK spy fiction, which was like John le Carré, and then the best traditions of US spy fiction, which was Robert Ludlum, and kind of combined those two to move the genre forward. So I was just enthralled with those books and those characters, and knew that after my time in the military, then I would do what they were doing. And I knew I didn't even really think that, oh, is it hard? Do you need an agent? How do you get a publisher? I didn't think about any of that. I just thought, I'm going to write a book. Books like the ones that I was reading back then that just were so magic to me back then. I just loved those memories that I had of reading all those novels growing up, and I wanted to do the same thing. So about I think 2 years before I got out, I really made the decision. Well, actually, when I got back from my last Iraq deployment, it was very evident that I needed to take care of my family. And it was time to get out, focus on them. It had been a good run in the SEAL teams, but I was a lieutenant commander, so a major in the other services. And really, in today's military, at least on the special operations side of the house, that's the last time I would tactically lead guys downrange. After that, as an 05, as a CO of a team, yeah, you're in a leadership position, but you're not leading guys from the front, kicking in doors downrange, doing that tactical job. You are definitely at that operational stage right there. You're not at that tactical level anymore. And if you try to be, then you just go out there and you mess everything up for the guys that are doing the job. So you're back in that tactical operations center, and that wasn't my favorite place to be. So my family needed me, and it was time to get on out. So that last 2 years is when I started working on it. Just decided to this in my mind. I read a book, actually, it's right here on the shelf, by Stephen Pressfield, who wrote Gates of Fire, Legend of Bagger Vance, Afghan Campaign, that sort of those books. And he's an amazing guy. We're friends now. But he made a point in one of those books that you need to decide to become a professional. If you're going to write, that's what you do. And in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm a writer now. And just went for it. And I got very lucky that someone did crack the door to me to New York Publishing. Brad Thor, who writes in this genre, had sat next to a friend of mine at one of these SEAL fundraiser functions years ago, and then my friend had helped him with some novels and that sort of thing on the military side of the house. And my friend called me and said, "Hey, do you know this Brad Thor guy? I heard you're writing a book. Do you want to talk to him?" And I said, "Wow, that's amazing. I'd love to." And so my friend set it up, and we had a great call, talked to him for about 30 or 45 minutes. And it was like a job interview. I think he wanted to test me to make sure I was doing it for the right reasons. And I told him exactly what I just told you right here about growing up and loving reading and always wanting to do this. And he said, now we know each other very well now, but he said never in a million years did he ever think this was going to work out. He thought that he was just going to crack the door, the publisher would read a couple words maybe, and then they'd say, hey, what do you want me to tell this guy? And he'd say, give him a couple pieces of advice and let him go on his way. But I sent it off to New York, and they loved it. And next thing you know, I'm there having coffee with Emily Bestler of Emily Bestler Books, which is an imprint of Simon & Schuster. And she publishes Brad Thor and published Vince Flynn and continues to publish the Vince Flynn novels that are written by Kyle Mills now. And we had a great conversation, and she said she wanted it. And she said, but you need an agent. And I was like, well, how do you get one of those? I had no idea. And luckily I didn't, because I might still be searching for one. So she introduced me to 4 different agents, and I picked the one that I thought was the best fit. And next thing you know, we're off to the races. So that is it in a nutshell, as they say.
That is very cool. How hard was it to kind of, after that long military career, how hard was it to transition from that to civilian life? And then, of course, being deployed away from your family for so long, so many times. How hard was it for that all to come back together?
Right. So I was very lucky in that my last few years, after I came back from my last Iraq deployment, I went to BUDS, to our training center, as an operations officer. So I wasn't leading guys tactically downrange, because when I was in the teams, that was my focus, was being the best combat leader I could possibly be. So when we talk about the pendulum and the family being over here and the team being over here, well, the team won out every time, up until I got back and took a breath and looked around and realized, okay, I'm at BUDS now, and I have these great phase instructors that are really handling everything. I'm not taking anyone downrange anymore. These guys are doing push-ups and sit-ups and surf torture and obstacle courses, and I can take a breath and I can think about transition. I can start thinking about that now. So I did. And as I was in that role, I observed other people that were getting out or attempting to make that transition. And I noticed that a lot of them had a hard time leaving behind special operations, because it was just so, you're so focused on the team, you're going down range with your best friends, you have that mission, you're not thinking about the leaky roof, you're not thinking about changing the diapers, you're not thinking about any of those things, paying bills. In my case, my wife handled all of that. And so she definitely had the tougher deal. But I saw guys try to recreate what they had in the SEAL teams in the private sector. And I noticed it time and time again. And not necessarily that they're trying to recreate having a team that they're going to assault an enemy compound with, but it was more so the feelings that they were trying to recreate of that camaraderie, that mission, that purpose. And they just had a hard time leaving what they did before behind, and looking at that as a chapter in their life, a very important one that they could then build upon. And I just noticed that over and over again. So I decided, made a very distinct transition, and I made the decision that when I leave this community, I'm going to move forward. And I was a SEAL, and now I'm an author, and that's what I do. That's hopefully what I did in Iraq and Afghanistan and in the SEAL teams. Hopefully it makes me a better father, a better husband, a better citizen, better author. But I don't live back there anymore. I look in the present and looking forward. So I wanted to make sure that that's the path that I took as an example to my kids, and I thought that was the most healthy way to go about it. Rather than, and then we also made a conscious decision to move from Coronado, California, where we lived, and make a physical and psychological break with the military. So we moved up to the mountains in Park City, Utah, and wanted to raise our kids in a ski town. And we also had another thing to contend with. We have a middle child who has some severe special needs, and he needs 24/7 full-time care forever. I think the last 2 of my deployments is, so he was born, and I did 2 after that, with my wife having to deal with that at the same time, which added a whole nother dimension to everything. But we found out about what was going on with him because no one could diagnose it. And I bring this up here just because of the connection, the military connection here, in that the military doctors couldn't figure out what was going on. We knew something was very serious, but couldn't quite figure it out. And 7-year mark, so I'm back from my last Iraq deployment. I'm just transitioning out of that operations officer position, and we get a call from Ross Perot, who just passed away last summer. And it sounds exactly like Dana Carvey impersonating Ross Perot on Saturday Night Live in the 90s, for anyone that remembers that. And he says, "Hey, we're gonna send the jet out, and we're going to pick you guys up, and we're going to fly you out here to Dallas, and we're going to figure out what's going on with your son. And I was kind of taken aback, didn't really know what was going on. And then about an hour later, his lead physician calls and says, hey, Mr. Perot just called, and we said they're going to send the jet tomorrow. We're not going to send it tomorrow, but we're going to send it in about a month. And in the meantime, send us all the information you have on your son, and we'll assemble a team of genetic specialists here in Dallas, and we'll see what we can do. And so sure enough, they sent the G550 jet. A little guy who was 7 at the time, and he's 12 now, but he got on that thing like he'd done it 1,000 times before, and they flew us out to Dallas, and sure enough, they had a team of genetic specialists out there, and they found out, they did some blood work and a bunch of other things for about a week, and they found a researcher in the Netherlands who had just discovered this certain genetic mutation, and our son was the 13th person in the world that they'd found that. So if it wasn't for Ross Perot, we might still not have a diagnosis. And I think he did that for so many people behind the scenes, military families behind the scenes with no recognition ever, not expecting any, not wanting any. But that's, I think, how he spent the last portion of his life, was really doing things like that. For people for zero recognition. And before he passed away, my first book tour went through Dallas, so I got to go see him again, and he still had a picture of our son there on his desk. So
wow.
Just being, and we're forever indebted to him and his family for doing that for us.
That is so awesome. What a great story. What a great opportunity as well. Switching gears just a little bit, Steve would like to know what you think about the TV series SEAL Team.
All right, now we get the serious questions. They do a great job with that. And so one of my friends is one of the creators of that show. And I was like, oh man, I'm gonna have to watch this thing because my buddy helped create it. And I was kind of like, oh, what am I gonna tell him when it's horrible? Which is what I expected. And I watched the first episode, and it was good. It was great. They got so much of the gear right. They had the nods. They were moving well together. They did a fantastic job with it. And now I know most of the guys acting on the show. I've been out there as master of ceremonies for the second season premiere out there. And all the guys are just, they employ, I think, over 150 veterans on that show in some way, shape, or form. Both in front of and behind the camera. They have Tyler Grays in front of the camera. He was a former Army Special Operations guy, and he's right there in the train, right there as an actor, which I think helps so much from the technical advising standpoint, because if you're a technical advisor on something, you're talking to an actor, you're telling him some things to do, you're showing him how to move, whatever, and then he goes off and kind of does whatever he wants, and maybe he tries. But if you're in there and you're in that stack with the actors, and you can correct them right away. They can look to you just like somebody that's more experienced on a team. You're looking at them, how they move, the decisions they make. You're getting mentored as you come up just by being around them. So having veterans on that show in front of the camera and behind it, but mostly that, but just my point was that being invested in it, knowing that your friends are going to see you and be able to call you and text you afterward and be like, what were you guys doing? That was ridiculous. Come on, get it together. Like you're just so much more invested in it when you're in front of the camera rather than just as an advisor on the side. But SEAL Team TV, they do a great job, is my point. I don't know how you could really portray both what goes on downrange and on the home front any better. They do a fantastic job.
Nice. Jennifer would like to know, what team were you assigned to? And she wants you to know that's her favorite show as well. So David is a hometown boy for her. So. Oh,
great. Yeah, he's been so great to me. He wears my uniform in the show, and you see him wear the American flag hat. That's my uniform behind the flag up there. It's my AOR-1 pattern camouflage uniform from Iraq from my last deployment. So he wears that on the show, which is pretty cool. And then AJ Buckley wears it sometimes too. He flips between me and another guy. There's a organization called Eagles and Angels that repurposes uniforms, and they make those hats. They make these belt buckles that are so cool. And then the veteran who donates the uniform gets to decide where those proceeds go. I have mine go to the National Ability Center out here in Park City, Utah, that does a lot of work with veterans and families when they return from deployments, or they get out and they have traumatic brain injury or post-traumatic stress, or they're just having some issues, and they can come out, get outside with their family. So that's where I had mine go. But yeah, I started at SEAL Team 5 on the East Coast, on the West Coast. And then after OCS, I went to Team 2 on the East Coast, and then finished up my time at Team 7 on the West Coast again. So I got a taste of both. And I think it was really interesting to come up really kind of come of age in the teams at the beginning, right after 9/11, because yeah, I had a little bit of experience beforehand, but no one knew what was going on after 9/11. Everybody was in it together. The families were in it, along with senior level leadership, along with brand new guys. Like everybody was figuring this out. And now if you come in today, I think it's kind of that model's been established. There's that paradigm already that's been established over the last 20 years. But when that shift happened on 9/11, we were all in it together. And it was just a really special time to be in special operations as families, and not just not just at the team, but family level too. They're figuring it out as well.
You mentioned the National Ability Center. Jillian mentioned that it was founded by a Vietnam veteran, and she said you regularly volunteer there. She'd like to know how has volunteering impacted your life and what perspective you have on it.
Well, at this stage, I just donate funds because I'm juggling a gazillion different things. But our son goes, and so yeah, it's so wonderful for him. He goes there, and they help people of all abilities and disabilities, and amazing staff, and they do things with him that we never would have thought in a million years he could do in San Diego. They put him on these zip lines, and they took him out, water skiing on an inner tube with this reservoir nearby, and they just there's such great people there. And so we feel so comfortable with him there, and it's just an amazing organization. So yeah, at this stage, I just help financially.
Okay. Gail would like to know, what book are you currently working on now?
Ooh, book 4. So I was on it all day. The first 3 are out. The third one made the New York Times bestseller list, and then I was on this Joe Rogan podcast, and then they announced the Chris Pratt Amazon series, and so everything got so crazy. And now I'm finally taking a breath and diving back into book 4. But each book has a theme, and the first one is really about revenge without constraint, and that's the terminal list. Second one is called True Believer, and that's really about redemption, and I call it a violent redemption. The character needs to learn to live again, find that purpose, find that mission, just like we talked about. And I use my experience from leaving the military and what I observed other people, how they transitioned from the military, and I use that and wove that into the storyline. And then the third one, Savage Son, is the one I wanted to write since 6th grade when I first read The Most Dangerous Game. And some of you might remember The Most Dangerous Game. It was a 1924 short story written by Richard Connell, and I just loved it back then. I couldn't believe, of all the things we were reading in the 6th grade, they gave us this book where it has people hunting people, and it was just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I wanted to one day write a novel that paid tribute to that short story. So that's the third one. And it was the one I really wanted to write first, and it explores the dark side of man through the hunted-hunter dynamic. But it's the one I wanted to write first, but I knew that the characters weren't yet at a level where I could explore that theme, and I needed to get them to that stage, and that the first 2 novels get me there and get those characters to that point, and then I really dive in on book 3 with those themes. But the fourth one is really explores the legality, the ethics, and the morality behind targeted assassinations, which is something that's more closely associated with Israel than it is us, although we do it. Back in January, we had a big controversy about the Soleimani hit, an Iranian operative in Iraq. But it really explores those themes. So I'm working on that right now, and that should come out in April 2021.
Very nice. So David would like to know if you like barrel-aged stouts.
Yes.
He says
I do.
He's got one if you want it.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, I'm not too particular on that sort of thing yet. It's mostly who I'm having them with, and these days in quarantine, it's mostly finally at the end of the day, kids are to bed, and finally have a peace and quiet for like 15 minutes, and my wife and I'll have usually have just a nice glass of wine on the couch as we decompress from the insanity of having all 3 kids in the house with us all day, every day.
Right. So speaking of that, how are you? What is some advice that you and your wife have kind of put together, or that you would be able to give other people of going through this quarantine and being a family all at once, and having the kids home 24/7? How do you combat that? What's how do you handle it?
Yeah, well, I need to take my own advice, because I was very, when we started this thing, I was very into having that schedule, and I had the whiteboard up, and we're going to get up at this time, and then we're going to do this, and we're going to have PT outside. I envisioned us all in the driveway doing like military PT, and then back inside for math time or whatever. It didn't really work out like that. It sounded really good at the time. So right now we're just trying to do the best we can. The kids have schoolwork, which is coming to an end here very soon, I think in the next few days. And then our school districts here in Utah, I don't know if it's a school district or if it's a private organization, they have some summer school things starting up, which thank goodness. So we'll do that. And I think so if one can pull off the schedule, I think that's the best way to go, is to have that regimented structure. For us, it didn't really work because I was launching a book right about then, and no one knew how do you launch a product in the middle. And it was Monday was the April 13th. The book came out on the 14th. So it was probably like the height of the hysteria, height of the uncertainty, as far as people not understanding what was going to go on health-wise, business-wise. Everyone's trying to adapt. A little bit of doom and gloom out there. So it was not the greatest time to launch anything. So when the kids saw me just kind of adapting and going different radio shows here, there, running in, figuring out how we're going to adapt, got to design this for independent bookstores, drive traffic towards independent bookstores. What else can we do? Oh, we can partner over here, do this. So I was just in this constant state of adaptation. And a structured schedule does not lend itself well towards adapting to a changing environment. So I think when this kicked off, timing wise, they kind of fed off me being very flexible, and they took that as they could be flexible too. So I think the schedule is the best way, and probably need to take my own advice on that. And as we move into summer, I think what we're going to try to do is just get outside as much as we can, and get out backpacking, get out river rafting, get out doing things that keep us kind of away from other people and away from some of that hysteria and uncertainty, but together as a family. So that's my plan anyway.
Very nice. And that's Steve just asked that question. He said, "What kind of outdoor activities do you like to do? Hunting, fishing, skiing, that kind of thing?"
All of the above, and we live here in a ski town, which is great. So the kids are all great skiers. My wife's a fantastic skier. I can ski. I don't look nearly as good as they do. They have a lot of style, and I get the kids out hunting, fishing, and on river trips as much as I can. I love those three things because it gets us away from the iPads, from the iPhones, gets us away from that electronic leash. There are a few places in the world that you can still go where people can't find you and can't contact you. And the bottom of river canyons is one of those places that seem to still be as about off the grid as you can get. So we just got back from a great trip on the main fork of the Salmon River, basically the main salmon, and had a great couple-day trip out there. My daughter's learning how to row, so we had a great time. So yeah, we try to get out hunting, fishing, backpacking, river rafting, and then the kids play tennis and other sports and that sort of thing as well.
Very nice. And do you keep up a strict PT regimen as well to do everything, or have you kind of slacked off since you retired?
So when we first got up here, I want to preface this, I was very good when we first got here. And I was getting up every morning at 5, and I was going down and meeting. I knew some people up here already that were just animals, and they are like all about being the best humans they can possibly be. They are about physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and I'd meet them about 5:30, and we do these insane workouts. So that lasted about a year, and I was very proud that it lasted past the launch of the first novel. And I did continued to work out on book tour. And then as soon as I got back from that, though, and really started dialing in that second one, then it became doing edits on promoting one book and edits on the second. And then when that one launched, it was promoting 2, edits on a third. So it was like, yeah, once again, I need to take my own advice and get out there and get back to working out. So these days it's mostly the activities with the kids. So it's just, that's what I have time for. And when I prioritized what I needed to do to make this series a success long term, it was those crazy workouts and getting up at that time was that's the one that fell down on the priority list, because I could be in great shape and not have any books out there available for purchase. So I'll get back into it at some point here. I think it'll be very important to get on a more disciplined schedule going forward. And I say that because right up to this point, what I've been doing is essentially like a startup. And what I used to think writing was that you just went to a cabin in the mountains, you wrote a book, you sent it to New York, and then you started the next one. And I didn't realize that there was a whole business behind it. And you have to do everything as an author that you would have to do if you were starting a coffee shop or a lumber company or whatever it is. You have to do all that advertising and marketing and branding and co-branding and budgeting and all those things you still have to do because it is still a small business. And if you want that small business to grow, then you also have to interact with people. And today, I look at these social media platforms as an opportunity to interact with it. So that's like my storefront. And I picture that, particularly Instagram, as having a general store in small town USA. And if someone comes into that store, well, I want them to have a good experience. And if they want to ask for directions back to the interstate, I can give them that. Or if they want to buy a candy bar or a six-pack or whatever it is, I can point them to the right aisle and have a nice conversation with them, and then off they go. And hopefully they leave there and want to come back, be a repeat customer. Or they want to tell a friend, hey, this general store was great. I had a great experience in there. Everybody was so nice. They had great service and great selection. And then somebody else comes to the store. So that's kind of how I look at it. But I also love the block feature, because just like if someone came into your general store acting like a crazy person, and you could toss them out. So I do like the block feature as well.
I can imagine. So was social media something kind of new for you to learn? I can't imagine you using it much as a SEAL. So how was that transition?
Yeah, so that was interesting. I started to realize that I'm going to have some sort of a presence. Like I knew I needed a website. I'm creeping up towards the first publication of the first novel. I had just a Instagram, whatever account, so I could just watch other accounts and kind of learn how to use it, watch what other people were doing, what was appropriate, what wasn't, what did I think was working, maybe what wasn't, just taking notes, just learning, because in the SEAL teams, I had no social media presence whatsoever. Back during that time, it couldn't help anything. Today, it's a little different. Today, if you don't have a social media presence, then that's what flags, especially if you're into the more dark side of special operations or you're going into the intelligence services or whatever else. Now the red flag is up if you don't have a presence. So it's a very interesting thing that people have to contend with the next generation coming into special operations and our intelligence services. But for me, I was still of a generation where it was normal not to have one. So I didn't see anything good coming from it. But as I got closer and closer to that publication date of the first novel, I realized, okay, I've been watching social media for a little while now. I have some lessons learned by watching others, and here I go. And then I just dove in, and I try to treat people the same way I would in real life if they walked into that general store. That's kind of how my rule. And it's for me, I really enjoy being able to say thank you to everyone, because people took a risk on me as an unknown author. They then told a friend, that person took a risk on me, and then they told a friend. And sometimes it was telling them verbally. Other times it was just saying something on social media to 10 followers, other time to 100 followers, other times to a couple thousand followers, whatever it was. And that's the reason that these books were such a success, is because of readers, because of people like that. And I want to say thank you to each and every person that reaches out and takes the time to say that the novels impacted them, or they enjoyed it, or they gave it to their dad who loved it, or whatever else. So I try to get back to everybody still at this point at the end of the day, and because I sincerely am appreciative of everyone doing that. And yeah, that was the third book made the New York Times list before the Rogan podcast and before Chris Pratt and Amazon announced the series. So it really was a grassroots word of mouth effort that got it there.
Very cool, very cool. I actually saw the trailer for the Amazon with Chris Pratt. I think I saw it on your website. It looks really good.
That's a book trailer video. That's not even the Chris Pratt one.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So usually.
I thought it was the actual movie one. Okay, all right.
People do. Most people do, because book trailers typically
aren't that good.
So, of course I have to I can't just, do anything kind of normal. I wanted to do it a little differently than it's been done before. So the book trailers for the first 3 books do stand out as being quite different. And I get a lot of people saying, oh, it looks great. I can't wait to see Chris Pratt do it. And it's not really, it's just for the book. So the film
got me, so I was like, wow, this is going to be really good. But the book was great too. So I'm a fan myself.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
So
in December, I think, maybe early 2021. It's kind of not sure with the with COVID stuff going on exactly what that's going to do to other filming schedules and how it's going to impact. But right now, I'm an executive producer and an advisor on the scripts. And the script for the first episode is awesome. It's so good. I'm so excited about it. And now they have a writer's room together, and then they'll start sending me the scripts for the other 7 episodes, and I'll start looking at those here pretty soon.
So just so everyone's kind of clear on that, so when you actually you wrote the book and then they're going to make kind of a movie or a series on it, you don't actually write the script for the series too. You just advise to whomever's writing. Is that correct?
Right. You can probably do it a few different ways, but most common way that this happens is your work is optioned by usually it's by a studio. In my case, Chris Pratt personally optioned it. And then they take that to a studio and then build out the episodes or write the movie or whatever else. There are times, like there are great examples of people holding on to that, like Sylvester Stallone with Rocky. Like he was offered money to sell it if someone else could star, if someone else could direct, if someone else could write, take that screenplay, and he didn't do it. So he, I don't know how that would work today, but back then he maintained all that control. And for me, it was, I pictured Chris Pratt playing James Reese, the protagonist, as I was writing. And so I was like, all right, if Chris Pratt wants this, like there's someone's telling me to say yes, like I should pay him to take this. And so that's kind of how it worked. But yeah, your work gets optioned and then they control that character so that they can do what they need to do in a way to tell a story visually, which is different than telling it on the page. So they have a great team together. Anton Fuqua is directing, who did Training Day. He got an Oscar for that. Tears of the Sun, Equalizer, Magnificent Seven, Shooter. He's just a fantastic guy. So they have a great team put together, and I feel so fortunate. So fortunate.
That is so awesome. That's so amazing. What a great transition from the book. Did you ever imagine when you wrote the book that would happen?
It's exactly what I imagined would happen, actually. I imagined that I'd write it, and Simon & Schuster would pick it up, and Emily Bestler would be my editor, and Chris Pratt would then option it, and Anton Fuqua would direct it, and it would go on Amazon. Like I pictured all of that, which is crazy. So people often ask me, well, do you believe in fate or whatever? And no, because when that opportunity or when that door gets cracked, like you have to be ready to take advantage of that opportunity. Like if that door cracked to New York Publishing and I didn't have a good product ready to give them, then, well, the door cracked, but then I'm not ready. Now I got to scramble, and maybe it doesn't happen. That opportunity fades. So you got to be ready for when that door cracks, if someone else cracks it for you, and you have to be the kind of person that people want to crack a door open for at the same time. So it's I feel super fortunate, but I pictured all that stuff happening, which is kind of crazy.
It is crazy. We'll go through this one last question here. And so Hollis wants to know, did the DoD approve your writing? And I believe I heard you talk a little bit about this on the Rogan show. So
they did.
Crazy.
Yeah, they did. So I should have just followed precedents and not submitted fiction, but they write things. It's so broad. Everything's so broadly written by design, I think. So the government can kind of choose, what they want to enforce or not. But I submitted fiction. I don't know anybody else that submits fiction. It took them 45 days. It's the government, the DoD Office of Pre-Publication and Security Review, and it took 45 days. And it says 30 in the things that I signed. So I thought 45 was pretty good. Like that's not bad for a gigantic government bureaucracy. So I expected kind of the same thing with the second novel. So I submitted that one. The first one, they took out 9 sentences or something like that. And they're all so ridiculous. But I just let it, okay, that's fine. And then the second one submitted, and they took out 54 passages or elements, or some words, some sentences, some paragraphs, but 54 of those. And then I appealed the second one through my attorneys, and they tied every single one of those redactions to a publicly available government document. So not just to a book written by somebody else or Wikipedia or whatever, no, to a publicly available government document. Government websites, government documents that you can download, anyone in the world can download. And then they submitted that for an appeal, and I won 37 of them. I didn't win all of them, even though you can go online right now to the government's own website and find that information. And I did it for the third one too. And the second one, it took 7 months. That's the other point. It's supposed to take 30 days, 7 months. We had to push publication date from April to July, which for someone's second novel, it was not the best time to come out, but still, it exceeded expectations on all fronts. It was all great. And then this third one, 1 month passes, 2 months pass, 3, 4, 5. We're getting to that 6 month mark. Simon & Schuster's getting very nervous, and last second, we got it like just in time to be able to publish on time. And they took out, I forget how many sentences in Savage Son, not as many as in True Believer, but once again, we appealed. My attorneys tied every single one of those to a publicly available government document and sent it in. And they wrote back to us. They said they wouldn't let us appeal. So I'm going to take that as, hey, stop bothering us, kid, with your fiction. We have better things to do. And so going forward, I've just, it's all made up. So I'm not going to submit going forward. I'm just going to take that, the refusal to appeal any of that as, hey, just go away and stop bothering us.
Very cool. And so your books, they are clearly available on all fronts to purchase. And Katie wanted to know if they're in the libraries yet.
They are. Most libraries have them. Every time I go by a library in my travels, I try to zip in and see if it's there. And if it's not, then I try to drop off a copy or two. So it should be available at your libraries, and it's available at ebook. People love the audiobooks. I'm a paper. I have to have that physical book in my hand, just growing up the way I did and reading. And but people love the audiobooks, and it's the fastest growing segment of publishing. And that first one was nominated for Audiobook of the Year, which was very cool by Audible. And I got to go to New York, and I'm there with the narrator, who's an awesome guy, Ray Porter. We brought I didn't realize this either, but he brought an entire fan base to the novel that follow him around. I didn't realize that people follow narrators now just the way they used to follow authors to their next work. So that helped a lot. And it was just totally surreal seeing it up there next to Stephen King's and the Ruth Ware. And it was crazy, totally surreal experience. So yeah, those are available everywhere in all formats. And but the first one sold out after the Rogan podcast. The Terminal List was sold out everywhere. It was hard to find. So Simon & Schuster is printing more, and I think they show up in early June. But yeah, as soon as I was on that show, it's the first one sold out in paperback and hardback pretty much everywhere. And you don't really see that especially on Amazon too much. You don't really see a paperback thriller that's you can't get.
Right.
That's crazy. But yes, if I'm not, we were talking about transitions earlier, and that second novel really goes into the transition piece from emotional and standpoint. But if people are listening that are transitioning or have transitioned and are just into it or thinking about it or whatever, the best advice I think that I can give is to identify those things that are important to you ahead of time. Meaning, as opportunities come your way and options come your way, identify before those things show up what's important to you. And it could be financial, it could be freedom in your schedule, it could be a whole bunch of different things. But identifying those ahead of time, that way when those options and opportunities come your way, you don't have to waste bandwidth sifting through, is this okay, we have to move here, okay, can we do that as a family, okay, it's in this space, I think that sounds interesting. No, you don't have to waste any time worrying about that, talking to your wife about it, flying out to that place, researching it. You already know what's important to you ahead of time. So that I think for me that was important. I identified what was important because I did have some tertiary plans. So I know we just talked about SEAL and writing, but it was important to have a couple backups just in case the writing thing didn't work out. So I had some plans there of some fallbacks, but even those, I didn't say yes to anything unless it fit what was important to me and my family, because I knew I only had a certain amount of bandwidth, and I didn't want to waste any of that anywhere. So I think that's probably the most important thing that I can say as far as a transition goes. So identify what's important to you ahead of time.
Definitely appreciate you coming back to that. That's some very solid advice to everyone. Just and as we make changes in our lives. So thank you so much for that. I was going to ask if you had any parting words, but that's a pretty good parting words right there. So again, thank you so much. And Steve says this was outstanding, and you're awesome. You did an awesome job presenting it. It was fascinating. So, I thank you so much for joining us tonight and being able to do this. This is quite the honor for all of us. So.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I know you said this is going to go tomorrow to the Air Force. So yeah, for them or for anybody, actually, the other part of this is don't pay attention to the odds. Like that's kind of my life mantra is don't pay attention to those odds, because there'll be plenty of people that'll tell you how hard it is to become a SEAL, or how impossible it is to get published by a New York publishing house, or how impossible it is to have an A-list star option in your work and then have it go on Amazon. Like there are plenty of people out there that will do that. So I would say use that as fuel and don't get discouraged. So don't pay attention to those odds. Don't waste bandwidth, again, focused on how hard something is. Just focus that bandwidth on preparing yourself for that. So if I thought just focused on how hard BUDS was going to be, well, that's wasted bandwidth where I'm not doing my push-ups, I'm not doing my hill sprints, I'm not doing my pull-ups, I'm not studying warfare. Like that's wasted time. Same thing where publishing is so hard, getting picked up by Simon & Schuster, that's so hard. Like that's wasted bandwidth. That was just 2 seconds where I wasn't making my novel the best it could possibly be. So I would say that really to anybody, but specifically to those the air people that are just starting their time in uniform or just starting down their path in life, don't get discouraged because of how hard something is or how hard people tell you something is. Focus your bandwidth on preparing yourself to crush it.
Very nice. Thank you so much. If you're ever in Colorado, you fly through, you know, you're more than welcome to at any time stop by our center in the airport. We'd love to see you, have you, host you. And Katie said, please come do a book tour in Colorado as well.
I was there at Tattered Cover last summer for True Believer. So I was at Tattered Cover and then went down to Colorado Springs down there. So did one down there as well. So next time, I'm sure I'll be back. Very cool. Very cool. All right. So it looks like everybody's, I don't know if you can see the chat, but everybody said that, you know, this has been amazing. And thank you so much for joining us. Someone's waiting for the books to come to the library, and someone else said they're going to buy them all now. So thank you guys. Really appreciate the support. Hope you like them. And yeah, thank you so much for having me on, and reach out if you ever need anything, if there's anything I can do for you. I think I have some books coming your way. I think we did talk about that with my publicist anyway. So I think we're getting some punch to the USO or the airports all across the land, I think. So love it. Love it. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Absolutely. Thank you. Again, thank you for your service, and thank you for everything that you've said tonight. So appreciate it. You guys take care. Thanks so much for having me, and reach out if you need anything. All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Linda.